Hey guys, a quick video on how to build a go-to-market playbook in Notion is what we're using today. Most of my clients are in SaaS and technology, some in services, but all are in the B2B space, meaning they sell to other companies, to other businesses. And that happens usually with a sales team. Sometimes an outdoors, in-field sales team, but more often, especially in startups, people start off with inside sales team. Um, so this blueprint is how you can think about it. Is really designed for marketing and sales teams to have one point of truth as a playbook to operate on top of, so to speak. So this is just the basic version. I do have other chapters. These are the chapters here you can see that I can add and amend depending on the clients that I work with. But this should be 75-80% of the basics. And yeah, I hope it's helpful for you or your team. So let's go through them on a high level. I won't go into all the details. I want to keep this a bit of a short video, but I think, like I said, that if you are in the tech space, some of it might be helpful when it comes to structuring a single source of truth for your go-to-market motion. So usually what we start with is obviously a company introduction, and that's a good point to mention that the way this was written is through the lens of a relatively junior employee in your company. And the reason for that is we want to keep the ramp up time for a BDR or SDR as short as possible and have them become sort of profitable or productive in the shortest amount of time. And that means it's short. Most points made are sort of succinct and very much to the point. And we try to avoid any kind of fluffy, long form text because then this becomes more of a knowledge base, which it really should not be. This is just kind of a handbook, survival book, if you will, for people in the go-to-market team, which is mostly sales, but there is some growth and marketing people that get value out of this as well. So let's start with the company introduction. This chapter obviously guides anyone that is new, particularly through the high-level mission, the strategy, the market problem that you could try to solve, the product highlights, obviously how you are unique, what is your USP, what the competitive landscape looks like. This is something that probably should be updated on an ongoing basis. And then a bit about the company background, a bit more the soft aspects of culture and the founding story. So all of this is quite enough to give somebody a good orientation when they start. Now, the second chapter is market and ICP. This really dives into, okay, what type of segments and market dynamics do we experience as a company, and how do we then, as a result of that, build up an ICP or ideal customer profile. So that on a high level, more macro, is usually market data. From there on, we can start to segment the ICP cohorts. Usually that is a handful. And if you're more early stage, really just one, two, or three. Around the time you find product market fit or have found product market fit, that's usually with one particular cohort or one particular ICP. If you start to branch out into multiple cohorts, you want to make sure that you have the financial and human capital available to do that and start spreading yourself as an organization. And then obviously there's a bit of context around other stakeholders in the sales process. These could be lateral stakeholders, people in adjacent departments that might need to sign off on things. Often legal, especially in larger ticket sizes like 40K, 50K. You get people that look at it through the IT compliance lens and security, as well as from the legal perspective. And so, those are obviously longer sales cycles, and we'll get into that. But it could also be more simple stakeholders, like a gatekeeper, just to get your foot in the door of a new account. Okay, then we really get into the the meat of the sales motion itself. So here's an example of a funnel architecture. Again, every company will have a different funnel, but we can go over some of the basics that I've learned working with a lot of clients, and how to think about keeping it as lean as possible without any sort of overhead on the operation side, and making sure that like sales teams really just can operate as quick as possible and really focus on closing valuable deals. So we'll go into this visual in a second, but just before that, here are some of the stages. Again, this is a baseline scenario. We usually tailor it with at least 2 or 3 stages, depending on the company. Some funnels are a bit longer. It also depends on the way we generate leads. Is it inbound? Is it outbound? But again, kind of think about this as an 80-20 rule. So this particular funnel would have the following stages: the MQL researched stage, then there's the contact made stage, disco call booked, that's discovery call, then demo call. We'll send over the offer after that, and then negotiations start, after which we can hopefully close the deal. So this is already quite a long, I would say slightly above average length, or in terms of number of stages. For startups, it could be as simple as, depending on the ticket size and sales cycle, it could be as simple as 3 stages or 4. Discovery or really just researched, discovery, call, and close, if you can close on the first call. This particular funnel is for a slightly more sophisticated product, which is more expensive and requires more education on behalf of the customer throughout the journey. So one note here you can see as I open up, as I enlarge this visual, hopefully. Yeah, there we go. This is falling off a little bit. Let me see if I can get it in here. There we go. As you can see, the stages here, MQL, outreach, and so forth, in the list here are basically all written in the past tense. So MQL researched, content was made, right? Disco call booked. This is done on a very simple but important reason, and that is that every deal that enters into each stage should already have completed the step that is described by the name of the stage. And this is really helpful for keeping a clean CRM, or good hygiene, so to speak, and really, leaves no room for misinterpretation, or room for interpretation, I should say, on whether a deal is qualified to move into that stage or not. And if you do not write stage names into the past tense, you're gonna get people applying different types of definitions to the criteria that allow the deal to either go in or not, and that just creates a lot of confusion. So I really am a big fan of naming the stages in the past tense. Again, very simple little trick, but it does work very well and leaves no room for error there. So let's open up the visual. Here is pretty much, again, a baseline overview. You've got your lead gen engines here. We'll talk about that. Then here is the descriptions of what's going on here. On a high level, this is your top of funnel, right? This is where it starts. This is where we are in the mid funnel. And here we are closing the deal. To go through it, marketing qualified lead, it should meet certain criteria. As you can see here, in this example, we would be looking at a minimum target company of 5 FTE. They should be headquartered in the EU or in Europe. They should have a developer team, and they should have at least 1 million euros in revenue. In this particular example, subscription revenue. So then we go to the outreach phase. When a deal moves in here, it should already have received a positive reply from the outbound funnel. That happens on the MQL, between the MQL and the outreach stage, and then we move into the disco call. Once that's scheduled, obviously then you can move into the SQL phase. So it continues on there. The one thing I'll zoom in on here is what happens on the disco call and the demo call are, in my experience, by far the biggest levers you could pull in a funnel. So assuming you can get leads to move through this funnel reasonably well, the biggest drop-off rate I've seen on average, there's outliers, but on average is in the mid-funnel during a discovery call. And if I zoom in on what particularly goes wrong in the discovery call, is that sales teams, especially more junior BDRs that haven't had the experience of really just selling by asking questions and selling by listening mainly, they talk too much. And so they're very eager to close the account, or even if it's founder-led sales in the early stages, they're very eager to, highlight all of the features, etc., which is just not the way you sell, especially not a sophisticated product to a sophisticated buyer. So what you want to do is listen and learn on the disco call and really earn the right to a demo call. So don't think of the first call as a demo call. It should just be a note-taking and listening call where you're going to do two things. One, primarily, 90% of the call's goal is to earn trust and credibility as to earning a second call. That's the first thing. Now, again, if you're really selling small tickets and very simple, selling a very simple solution, you could close in the first call. I'm not talking about that type of sales motion. We're talking about a, $25 to $30 and up $1,000 ticket per year. You need to educate, you need to earn trust, and you need to earn credibility, right? So the discovery call is all about letting the person speak, giving them peace of mind that you are there as sort of a trusted guide in this process, who is knowledgeable, who's credible, who's honest, and who doesn't come across as pushing your solution too hard and too aggressively. So that's a very, very important thing. If you can make sure that your sales team does that, you are probably ahead of 80% of the other sales team. So listen and learn in this stage. Now, once you do get the demo call after that, now you can really tailor the demo to the needs that you have unlocked and uncovered or discovered really in that discovery call. That's why it's so important to understand that you're not going to talk too much in the first call. You're going to have to really understand what the pain point is, and then you, with a sophisticated solution that you're trying to sell, can really dial in on that particular pain point in the demo call, often where colleagues of your prospect are invited, right? So you're not just talking to one person anymore. You've now got a foot in the door. Perhaps there's two other stakeholders there. So you can keep drilling down on that particular pain point that you discovered in the first call. And by preparing your demo call around that pain point, there will be a lot more, or there will be a much higher chance of a good reception on behalf of the prospect, because A, they now know that you've listened to them on the first call, and that sort of is rare these days, so that's good. And B, you can now really discuss why your solution is uniquely positioned to actually address that point. So disco call, demo call, different purposes, different stages in the timeline. One leads to the other. They are in sequence and they should be treated as such. So after that, you go to the offer, and now you can build the offer around the need again. So that's just something I wanted to highlight. Other things I'm highlighting here is the tech tools that we use in this example. Obviously, all of this can fluctuate. Every company has their own tech stack. But by and large, you have a CRM, you have some sort of enrichment tool, you have some logistics, calendar scheduling, and then obviously there's some basic legal closing technology on the DocuSign side, and potentially even on some drip campaigns if you want to follow up automatically. So then there's a timeline. I think it's important for people to understand what is the average sort of sales cycle you're aiming for. Usually we set a complete cycle based on historic data. In this case, it's a quarter, so something like 90 days, and we work our way back through the funnel, right? So, and the reason you do this is because you want to start bucketing each stage, or really just bucket that timeline into sections, so you can optimize how long a deal should ideally stay, obviously as short as possible, ideally. But then there's friction with reality, right? And so you can see that in this particular example, surprisingly, most of the waiting and out of your control delays, if you will, in this sales cycle is during negotiations, because often in this particular example, In a more complex product, more stakeholders will be looped in. Legal is slow; they've got other things to do, et cetera, et cetera. So you usually go a bit quicker in the beginning of the funnel, and you start to get more resistance as you get closer to the close, which makes sense. Okay, a bit more on the lead gen. So yeah, lead gen can come from many different channels, but on the whole, there is two buckets, which is outbound and inbound. Now there is network, and people debate whether that's inbound or outbound, but it really depends on how warm the partner is, the partner lead is. Ultimately, I would bucket it as outbound and inbound. Both have advantages and disadvantages. Won't go into details of that now, but make sure you understand where you're gonna get leads from on an ongoing, sustainable basis. In the beginning, you don't have to be, doing a positive ROI on your lead. You can invest a bit, especially if you're venture backed, but you do want to have a plan to get to a reduction in cost acquisition, ideally, right? That's very difficult to do, but especially with products that allow for product-led growth, which is the best type of growth, right? Where one customer somehow loops in the next customer, or at least subsidizes it, is of great benefit. All right, so then that's basically the funnel architecture base case, right? Nothing too crazy yet. We can build it out much more fancy as your sales team and RevOps team scales, but that's just something to use as a baseline. So this I'm gonna skip. It's not that interesting. Tech and tools. This is a sample list of tech. You can take a look at that if you want. As I said, I think tech is secondary to all the content that you're actually thinking about. The messaging, the ICP, like just the actual matter of your sales motion. Who are you selling to? What are you selling? Why would they buy from you? Think about all of that stuff 10 times more than about what tech you use. It's not that important. All the tech these days is pretty good. And I wouldn't waste too much time on that. Lead scoring is for teams that have kind of like figured out their first funnel, baseline, and now they want to start optimizing. So I wouldn't start with this if you didn't do anything in particular yet when it comes to like any kind of proper funnel management. If this is your first sort of funnel and your V1, I would not touch lead scoring. But if you go to that second version of iterations and you have been in the market for 3, 6, 9 months, I think lead scoring can be very powerful. So lead scoring essentially allows you to quantify what a good lead is across the funnel, through the stages of the funnel. HubSpot has it built in. I think Pipedrive has it built in as well by these days. So how it works is this is a sample scoring system you can see here. You set up some criteria that you think have discovered in your first version. That's why it's important you have some experience with this and you have some market feedback. You say, hey, this kind of signal, this kind of metric or attribute within a prospect's profile is very is a great predictor, or has been a great predictor in successful deal closes, right? So when you start to sort of observe these kinds of trends, or kind of connect the dots around certain insights, you can say, hey, let's set up a scoring system and include those attributes and assign a certain score to them. So in a very simple system, you might say something like, hey, every time we talk to a KDM or like a key decision maker, that really improves the odds of success, which is obviously true. So let's assign 10 points to that metric. So the moment a BDR in the research phase, in the MQL research phase, goes through this checklist of scoring and basically sees, hey, or after the first disco call, we talk to the KDM, he or she is available, we have access to him or her. Okay, let's assign 10 points. So you check it in your CRM, the lead now gets 10 more points. Let's say you're selling into the United States. Now, if you find the lead or in a particular state, you want to sell medical solutions, Houston is a big medical hub, let's say, is the person in Houston or within Texas? Okay, yes, okay, another 10 points. So you get the idea. You can make this as complex as you want. I would try to keep it simple and go from there. But ultimately now you have all of your leads have a certain amount of points, and you can triage them. You can really score them and benchmark them against your past performance and see, what level of points are pretty much minimally required to get you through the finish line. That's something that ultimately you get out of this, and it just helps you quantify the funnel. And especially if you work with multiple BDRs and you want to really systemize and structure your entire sales motion in more of a standard operating procedure, this can be very, very powerful. Obviously, you can trigger automations in your funnel based on certain points, and yeah, it just helps you it helps you quantify and make it a lot more numbers based, which in sales is quite useful. Campaigns and messaging is really about all the creative and copywriting that goes into any of the campaigns, whether it's content or outbound. You need a type of message, right? If it's outbound, it's in emails, LinkedIn, or text messages, or some sort of other direct channel. If it's content, it's obviously more about posts, articles, essays, etc., white papers, ebooks, things that you want to really give out for free, and then in return capture the email address, let's say. You want to build campaigns and messaging very, very tailored around ICPs. I'll talk about that in another video, which is really geared towards outbound. BDR workflow, not applicable to all teams because sometimes there's no BDRs yet, it's just founder-led sales. But obviously you do want to set some guardrails and some structure as to what more often than not is a junior position, a BDR or a business development representative, and how they should structure their work around their daily tasks, their weekly tasks, their monthly tasks. Usually there's a stand-up of some sorts and a check-in. Really make sure that as the sales lead, or if it's founder-led, as the founder, excuse me, you're going to really engage them, so you can drive them and push them towards obtaining their goals, while at the same time sort of unlock some insights that one BDR might have discovered recently and the other BDR doesn't. You want them to talk to one another, right? And if there's multiple or there's a team, this is particularly true. So you want all of that knowledge to be democratized within your team, so that everyone learns from the same mistakes and starts dialing in more and more on the ideal customer profile that your company is going after. So this is something you can build out pretty extensively, especially as the team grows, and if you get a permanent, revenue operations or CCO kind of a profile in the company, he or she can then really work with this baseline case and build it out, and you can get very sophisticated around that, right? You also need, HR will be looped in. You'll need things like compensation packages, accelerations when it comes to your quotas, etc., etc. So this is a very, very basic standard starting point. Storyflow is something that I'm working on the side. It's a product. If you're interested in that, please check it out at joinstoryflow.com. It is a user-generated, I should say it's an API that helps you collect and publish user-generated content. So the thesis that we have is that in a world of AI, everything is obviously coming out of these AI engines, but they are all kind of shallow and flat content because they're based on obviously all of the input that went into their models. And what we do is make it very easy for any B2B company to connect with either a prospect or an existing client and then drive them automatically. Everything is on full autopilot in the back end, through a flow. That's why it's called story flow, and get a story out of them, which is relevant to them because it's going to get posted online ultimately, but it's definitely also relevant for you as a company, because now you generate authentic content. This is a great piece of media that you can now build a relationship on top of, so it can help you with some top of funnel, some lead gen. It can help your marketing team, fill up the content calendar, and as well help your sales team basically extract some insights from within that story that we are able to collect from them, and increase conversion rate in the sales process. So check it out, sign up and book a call, and we can see if we can work there together. The last one is go-to-market coaching and support. This is obviously just all of the chapters that you see here have to be digested and transferred in terms of like practical day-to-day actions and to-dos. And that's what I think this is very powerful for, is really helping clients to transfer all of this knowledge and actually build up an internal support system within the go-to-market team, so that sales understands what the frustrations are on the marketing side, and vice versa. I hope this was helpful. This is a basic version. As I said earlier, we can get much more complex. I have about double the amount of chapters that we can amend this playbook to and really optimize it for every type of company. But yeah, this is a good start. If you've got this, I think it will help align and focus your team and make sure everyone's operating on the same facts and motion. So anyway, hope this was helpful.